we need to greatly accelerate housing, and we're producing about 1,500 units a year. We need to be much more. And so I enrolled my colleagues and the mayor and set forward a big, what we call a big audacious housing goal, building 40,000 units in the next 10 years, which will be almost three times what we're doing now. And then going through this exercise I had a roundtable with developers a couple of weeks ago on what needs to be true. What do we need in terms of gap financing? What do we need in terms of subsidy? Do we need in streamlining regulatory approval, et cetera? And that's been a really meaningful way to engage all the stakeholders, right? Because it means the developer community, it means community councils, it means my colleagues, everyone has to have input. But we're hugely excited about that, about that endeavor.
What have you found from those conversations that needs to be true? If every city wants to build 10,000 units or some number close to there, what are you hearing from the folks who build the housing of what they need to make that happen?
Yeah, of course, everyone has NIMBY challenges, right? People who are, and that's such a negative term in so many ways, but, a lot of people buy property in their neighborhood and, they buy it with a set idea of what that neighborhood is, and often they don't like change. And so I think you have to recognize that, and how do you engage people in that change to make sure that they're brought along. In our case with this 40,000 units, I've said, hey, look, at least 20,000, if not 25,000 should be downtown, because we can build as high as we want downtown and there's no barriers. And we have a lot of surface parking that could be easily converted to apartment dwellings with garage underneath, which we've done in several cases. And so that kind of tackles that issue of, community opposition. So that's one of those issues is, community opposition. The other is the where does this go? And are there zoning changes that we need to make? So we're looking at some older, what were manufacturing districts, and converting those to enable housing. So zoning is a whole nother kind of what needs to be true. And then the other is, I referenced it earlier, streamlining approval process, being best in class in terms of approving permits and, the time it takes, because time is money. I talked to one developer recently who was building a house and said, yeah, I didn't get my permit for 5 months because the person was out on maternity leave and they didn't give it to somebody else. And he had to increase the cost of the price on the unit by $20,000. And so that directly affects building more housing that is affordable. So it's streamlining it. And then the last is going to be, having some gap financing, because the reality is construction costs have gone up more than 45% in the last few years. And, I said recently we had a development ahead of us, and without any subsidy, it was about a 3% return. And I looked at my high yield American Express savings. I'm like, I'm earning 3.6% return. I'm like, a developer can just put it in a zero risk high yield and get more than here. Why in the world would they do it? And so those are the realities that I think we also have to confront, is how do we enable it and ultimately build housing of all kinds. We need housing of all kinds. We need market rate. We need workforce housing. We need income restricted housing.